The woman grabbed my arm at our anniversary party, pointed upstairs, and whispered, "Your husband is upstairs with my wife." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. The music was too loud, the rooftop too bright, the champagne too expensive for words like that to exist in the same space. But she didn't repeat herself. She just stood there in a black silk dress, perfectly still, watching me with the kind of cold expression people wear when they've already survived the worst part. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. That night was supposed to be perfect. 10 years of marriage. 10 years with Ethan Cole, the brilliant corporate attorney everyone in Chicago seemed to either fear or admire. He was handsome, ruthless in the boardroom, charming in public, and for a long time, I'd convinced myself those things made him safe. I was wrong. Our anniversary party was being held on the rooftop of the Langford Hotel downtown. Glass walls, skyline views, imported white roses, a jazz quartet in the corner, and over 200 guests celebrating what they thought was the perfect marriage. Our marriage. I was wearing a silver dress Ethan had picked himself. Something unforgettable he'd said with that smile that used to make me weak. I should have known. Men like Ethan never choose gifts. They choose stage props. I was greeting investors, smiling at judges' wives, pretending not to notice how half the women there looked at my husband like he was a private investment opportunity. I was Emily Cole, CFO of my father's company, Cole and Mercer Holdings, the family business I had spent 12 years helping build. Ethan liked to call it our empire. Funny, considering he'd been planning to steal it. At 9:17 p.m., while a waiter handed me another glass of champagne, the woman appeared. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, controlled anger, beautiful in the kind of way that came from surviving things. She didn't introduce herself. She simply stepped close enough that no one else could hear and said, "I'm not here to ruin your night." I stared at her. She continued, "I'm here because your husband has been ruining mine for 2 years." My fingers tightened around the champagne glass. What? She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. 3 taps. Then she turned the screen toward me. Photo 1. Ethan. At a hotel bar. His hand on another woman's waist. Photo 2. A kiss. Not accidental, not explainable. Deliberate, intimate, cruel. Photo 3. Text messages. Ethan. She still thinks I'm loyal. It's almost cute. Sophia. Then stop pretending and take what's yours already. I felt the blood drain from my face. I read every word. Twice. My stomach turned so violently I thought I might collapse right there between the champagne tower and the violinist. Who is she? I asked. The woman's jaw tightened. My wife. She let that sit, then added, Sophia. I looked at her again. This time I saw it. Not just anger, humiliation. The same humiliation crawling under my skin. My name is Claire, she said quietly. And before you ask, yes, I stayed too long too. I whispered, how long? 2 years. 2 years. While Ethan kissed me goodbye before work. While he held my hand at charity galas. While he stood in our kitchen talking about children. 2 years. Claire leaned closer. And then she delivered the second blow. The one that actually broke something inside me. They're upstairs right now, together. I blinked. No. She nodded once. Yes. Not the past. Not old betrayal. Not some forgiven mistake buried under years. Now. Tonight. At our anniversary party. While our guests toasted us downstairs. They were upstairs. Together. I looked across the rooftop and saw people laughing under string lights. Friends, partners, board members, people raising glasses to love while mine was already decomposing 1 floor above them. And I realized something horrifying. Everyone always says betrayal feels like a knife. That's wrong. A knife is fast. Betrayal is slower. It's realizing your entire life has been happening in a room everyone else already left. I handed my champagne glass to the nearest passing waiter because my hands were shaking too badly to trust myself. Claire asked softly, "Do you want me to come with you?" I looked toward the hotel elevator, toward the private master suite Ethan had reserved for us after the party. Our room, our bed, our humiliation. And I said the calmest lie of my life. No, I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I was walking through my own funeral. I moved through the party with a smile so perfect it should have won awards. People stopped me. Emily, this party is stunning. You two are relationship goals? Where's Ethan? Probably planning your next 10 years? I smiled. I thanked them. I shook hands. And all I could think was, he's upstairs destroying everything while you clap for him. The elevator doors opened. Soft piano music floated up from below. Laughter, glasses clinking. My marriage being applauded downstairs while it died upstairs. I stepped inside alone. As the doors closed, I looked at my reflection in the mirrored walls. Perfect makeup, perfect dress, perfect wife. A woman seconds away from discovering exactly how ugly perfect can be. And that's when everything changed. The master suite door wasn't locked. That somehow hurt more. No secrecy. No caution. No fear of being caught. Just arrogance. I stood there in the quiet hallway of the hotel's private floor, my hand still resting on the gold handle while soft laughter drifted from inside like poison. Ethan's laugh. Low, familiar. The same laugh he used when he kissed my forehead and told me I worked too hard. The same laugh he used when he promised me forever. And another voice. Her. Sophia. Smooth. Confident. Intimate. Like she belonged there, like I didn't. For one stupid second, I wanted to turn around, to walk away, to pretend I had never come upstairs because as long as I didn't see it, maybe some tiny broken part of me could still survive. But then I heard Ethan say, "Trust me, she has no idea." And that part of me died anyway. I pushed the door open, slowly, silently. The suite was dimly lit. Warm lamps, expensive whiskey on the table, the city skyline glowing through floor-to-ceiling windows. And there they were, in my bed, my husband, and his mistress. Sheets tangled around them like evidence. Sophia was wearing my silk robe, the one I bought in Paris, the one Ethan said made me look unforgettable. I stared at it before I even looked at her face. Funny how betrayal makes your brain choose strange details. On the nightstand sat the anniversary gift I had bought for him, a vintage Patek Philippe watch, still wrapped, untouched, because apparently adultery had been more exciting than opening presents. Sophia laughed softly and traced a finger down Ethan's chest. "So when are you finally doing it?" Ethan smirked. "Soon." "Soon," she repeated. "You've been saying soon for 8 months. He took a sip of whiskey. "She's predictable, Sophia. Emily trusts paperwork more than people. That makes this easy." I froze. This wasn't just cheating. This was strategy. Sophia leaned against the headboard. "And the company?" Ethan smiled. That smile, the one I would later learn belonged to a stranger, she'll never see it coming. He said it so casually, like discussing the weather. "By the time she finds out," he continued, "the company will already be mine." I stopped breathing. Not marriage. Not just betrayal. War. Cole and Mercer wasn't just business. It was my father's life, my mother's sacrifice, my inheritance, my responsibility. And Ethan, my husband, was lying in my bed planning a corporate takeover with his mistress. Sophia laughed. Honestly, she deserves it for being so boring. Ethan chuckled. She thinks being loyal is enough. People like that practically beg to be replaced. I should have screamed. I should have stormed in, thrown the whiskey glass, destroyed them. That's what movies teach women to do. Cry, break, bleed publicly. But standing there, hidden behind that half-open door, I realized something. Tears were too cheap for what they had done. Anger would have been a gift. Pain would have entertained them. And I was done being entertainment. So I stood there, silent, listening, learning, because revenge begins the moment emotion ends. Sophia slid closer. What about the trust documents? Ethan smiled again. I've already handled most of it. Once the transfer clears, I'll control enough voting power to force her out. And the divorce? He shrugged. She'll get emotional. They always do. By then, it won't matter. I felt something inside me go still. Not broken. Still. Cold. Precise. The kind of calm that comes right before a hurricane chooses a direction. I stepped back from the door, quietly, carefully. No dramatic entrance. No tears. No confrontation. Not yet. I walked back to the elevator with the same posture I used walking into board meetings. Shoulders straight, face calm, heart in ruins. When the elevator doors closed, I looked at myself again, and for the first time that night, I didn't see a betrayed wife. I saw a woman preparing an execution. Downstairs, the party was still glowing. Music, champagne, people dancing under the lights. I stepped out smiling. A board member's wife grabbed my hand. Emily, where have you been? We were looking for you. I smiled like I hadn't just watched my marriage rot upstairs. Handling something important. And I was. I crossed the ballroom and slipped into the hotel's private business lounge. Glass walls, silence, control. I locked the door behind me. Then I pulled out my phone. First call, my attorney, Daniel Mercer, family lawyer, shark in a Brioni suit. He answered on the second ring. Emily, it's late. I need emergency action tonight. Silence. Then his voice changed. What happened? My husband is sleeping with his co-conspirator at our anniversary party while planning to steal my company. Pause, then, I'll clear my schedule. Second call, our bank. Freeze every unusual transfer. Flag every pending corporate movement. No approvals without my authorization. Third call, my private accountant. I wanted a full forensic audit. Every wire, every signature, every hidden trail. If Ethan had been moving pieces, I wanted the entire board. Fourth call, trust counsel. Because suddenly, I needed to know exactly one thing. Who legally owned Cole and Mercer? Not assumed, not socially, legally. Because if Ethan wanted war, I wanted documentation. I returned to the party 30 minutes later. Perfect lipstick, perfect smile, perfect wife. Ethan eventually came downstairs, adjusting his cufflinks like he hadn't just betrayed me in our bed. He kissed my cheek in front of everyone. Warm, familiar, disgusting. Sorry, baby. Investor issue upstairs. I smiled at him, touched his tie, and said, Don't worry, darling. I looked straight into his eyes. I think tonight is going to solve everything. He smiled back. He thought I meant romance. He had no idea I meant destruction. And what I discovered the next morning was the reason his entire life was about to collapse. At 6:12 the next morning, I was sitting alone in my father's old office, staring at a document that made me laugh for the first time in 12 hours. Not because it was funny, because Ethan was far dumber than he thought. Outside, downtown Chicago was just waking up. Inside, Daniel sat across from me, coffee untouched, reading through trust documents that hadn't been opened in years. My private accountant, Laura, stood by the window with a forensic report in her hand. 3 people. 1 war, and 1 beautiful truth. Daniel adjusted his glasses and looked at me. Well, he said slowly, your husband is either incredibly arrogant or catastrophically stupid. Both, I said. He nodded. Fair. He slid the trust file across the desk. Legally speaking, Ethan doesn't own this company. He never did. I stared at the numbers. Cole and Mercer Holdings. Ownership structure. 87%. Emily Harper Cole. Not Ethan. Me, through a protected inheritance trust established by my father 12 years earlier. A structure so quiet, so old, so intentionally buried in legal language that Ethan had clearly never understood it. Publicly, Ethan looked powerful. He carried the CEO title. He spoke at conferences. He charmed investors. He loved introducing himself like he built the empire. But legally, he was a salaried executive with excellent suits. That was it. No majority control, no hidden authority, no throne, just a man renting a crown. I leaned back in my chair. He really thinks he can force me out. Daniel gave me a dry smile. He can force himself into unemployment. Laura stepped forward and placed another folder on the desk. And it gets better. I opened it. Bank transfers, private shell accounts, corporate movement trails. And there she was. Sophia Bennett, Claire's wife, Ethan's mistress. And, because apparently betrayal likes efficiency, our senior VP of strategic acquisitions. I stared at her name. Again. And again. Then I whispered, "You've got to be kidding me." Laura shook her head. I wish I was. Sophia wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was helping him build the takeover. Quiet transfers, manipulated vendor approvals, delayed audits, asset movement disguised as expansion strategy. She and Ethan had been planning it for over a year. Divorce, corporate seizure, financial extraction, public control. They weren't having an affair. They were building a conspiracy. Daniel folded his hands. If we prove intent, this stops being ugly divorce territory and starts entering fraud, fiduciary misconduct, and potentially SEC exposure. SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. Career-ending letters, reputation funerals, federal attention. Perfect. I thought about Claire, the woman downstairs last night. The stranger who handed me truth like a loaded weapon. She knew, I said quietly. Laura nodded. She sent me something this morning. She handed me her phone. One message. From Claire. Sophia has been using Ethan's second phone. I copied everything before I left. Attached emails, hotel receipts, voice notes, private calendar logs, and one very stupid recorded conversation. I pressed play. Sophia's voice first. If Emily signs the restructuring papers, we're done by Q3. Ethan laughed. She signs whatever I put in front of her. She still thinks I'm the best thing that ever happened to her. Sophia. And after the divorce? Ethan. She'll cry. I'll keep the company. Everybody wins. Silence. Then Sophia laughed. Cold, cruel. God, I hated that laugh. I set the phone down, very carefully, because rage, when focused correctly, becomes strategy. And strategy is cleaner than screaming. Daniel studied me. You're being very calm. I looked at him. No, I said. I'm being expensive. That made Laura laugh. Good. I needed laughter. Because otherwise I might have driven directly to Ethan's office and committed a felony. Instead, I did something better. I made a plan. Step 1, say nothing. Let Ethan believe he was winning. Let arrogance keep him sloppy. Step 2, schedule an emergency board meeting. Full attendance. Investors, partners, senior leadership. Press if necessary. A beautiful professional funeral. Step 3, give Ethan exactly what he wanted. A stage. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You're going public? I nodded. He humiliated me in private. I'm returning the favor with witnesses. Laura smiled like a woman watching fireworks being prepared. I'll prepare the financial trail. Daniel said, I'll prepare the legal execution. I stood and walked to the office window. Chicago stretched below me. My father used to stand here and tell me, never fight loud people with louder noise. Fight them with paperwork. God, I miss that man. Ethan thought he was smarter because he lied beautifully, but my father built empires with silence. And I was his daughter. At noon, Ethan called. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, beautiful, he said. Like last night didn't exist. like betrayal had good manners. Morning, I replied. He sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. I was thinking maybe we do dinner tonight. Just us. Celebrate properly. I nearly smiled. He was probably calling from Sophia's bed. Sounds lovely, I said. I miss you. Lie. I know, I said. Another lie. Then he said something that made this even sweeter. Also, I scheduled the board meeting for Friday. I think it's time we discuss leadership restructuring. I closed my eyes for 1 second, because sometimes God personally delivers revenge. Perfect, I said. I was hoping you'd say that. He laughed. Confident. Relaxed, walking willingly into his own destruction. Before hanging up, he said, "You trust me, right?" I looked at the skyline, at my father's building, at my company, at the life he tried to steal. And I answered with the calmest voice I had. Completely. After the call ended, Daniel asked, "So, Friday?" I smiled. Cold, precise, final. "No," I said. "Friday is not a meeting." I picked up the evidence folder. Oh, it's an execution. And Ethan still had absolutely no idea he was about to be fired from his own fantasy. Friday morning, Ethan kissed me goodbye and told me to wish him luck. I almost laughed. He stood in our kitchen wearing a navy suit I bought him in Milan, adjusting the tie I had given him for Christmas, looking like the polished golden boy everyone trusted. The same man who had been sleeping with my executive. The same man who thought by noon he would own my company. He smiled and said, "By tonight, everything changes." I looked at him over my coffee. "Oh, I know." He leaned down and kissed my forehead. I let him. Because sometimes the cruelest revenge is letting someone feel safe right before the floor disappears. At 10 a.m., the boardroom on the 42nd floor of Cole and Mercer Holdings was full. Board members, investors, senior partners, legal counsel, outside advisors, even 2 financial journalists Ethan had personally invited because he wanted witnesses for his victory. Perfect. Nothing ruins a man faster than public documentation. The glass walls overlooked the entire city. Sunlight poured across the polished black conference table like a stage light. And Ethan loved stages. Oh, he stood at the head of the room, confident, smiling, already acting like a king preparing to announce succession. Sophia sat 3 seats away, wearing white. Bold choice for a woman attending her own professional funeral. She gave me a small, smug smile when I entered. I returned one. Mine meant goodbye. Daniel sat beside me, Laura across from us. And in my bag, everything. Emails, transfers, recordings, hotel receipts, fraud, affair, conspiracy, marriage autopsy. Ethan opened the meeting. "Thank you all for coming on short notice." His voice was smooth, practiced, manipulative. "I believe leadership requires clarity, and today is about the future of this company." He clicked the remote. A slide appeared. Strategic restructuring proposal? Cute. He kept talking. "Over the past year, I've identified operational inefficiencies and leadership gaps that require decisive correction." Leadership gaps. Meaning me. He was trying to remove me from my father's company using PowerPoint. Honestly, men are adorable. He glanced at me. Professional smile. Corporate knife. For the good of the company, I believe executive authority must be consolidated under singular leadership. Translation. He wanted the throne. Sophia nodded like an obedient little villain. Several investors shifted uncomfortably. One board member asked, "And Emily's position?" Ethan folded his hands. "I believe transitions are difficult, but necessary. Emotional attachment should never interfere with business evolution." Emotional attachment. That was how he described my father's legacy. I let the silence stretch. Then I stood, slowly, calmly, and said, "I agree." The room turned. Even Ethan blinked. Good. Confused men make mistakes. I walked to the front of the room beside him, set my folder on the table, and smiled. You're absolutely right, Ethan. Emotional attachment should never interfere with business. He relaxed. For one beautiful second, he thought I was surrendering. Then I connected my laptop to the main screen, and his entire face changed. First slide, hotel receipts, dates, room numbers, signatures, him, Sophia, repeatedly. The room went silent. Sophia stopped breathing. Ethan's smile vanished. I clicked again. Photos, kissing, entering hotels, weekend trips during business conferences, investor retreats, my anniversary week, my birthday. I looked directly at the board. For anyone confused, let me simplify. Our CEO and our senior VP of strategic acquisitions have been conducting a 2-year affair while using company resources to support it. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I clicked again. Bank transfers, shell accounts, hidden approvals, unauthorized movement of corporate funds. Sophia whispered, Emily. I raised a hand. No, you've spoken enough in my bedroom. That landed. Hard. Even Daniel looked impressed. Ethan stood up. This is inappropriate. I turned toward him. No, Ethan. Inappropriate was sleeping with your co-conspirator in my bed during our anniversary party. Silence. Absolute silence. I pressed play on the audio recording. His voice filled the room. She signs whatever I put in front of her. She still thinks I'm the best thing that ever happened to her. Sophia's laugh followed. Then, after the divorce, I keep the company. When it ended, nobody even pretended. The board members looked sick. The investors looked furious. The journalists looked thrilled. Career-ending silence. I stepped closer to Ethan, close enough that only he could hear my next breath. Then I said it clearly for everyone. You weren't having an affair. I let the words hang. You were performing a hostile takeover in my bedroom. One of the investors actually muttered, Jesus Christ. Exactly. Ethan tried one last move. This proves nothing about ownership. There it was. His final mistake. I smiled. The real one this time. Actually, I said, it proves everything. Daniel slid the trust documents across the table. Original trust, inheritance structure, ownership filings, control rights, voting majority, 87%. Mine. I looked around the room. For those unclear on the legal structure of this company, let me save time. I turned back to Ethan. You are not the owner. His face went white. You are not the controlling partner. Whiter. You are not even close. Sophia whispered, No. I finished. You are a salaried employee with excellent hair. Laura choked, trying not to laugh. Several board members failed completely. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. That's impossible. Daniel finally spoke. No. Impossible was your plan surviving legal review. Then came the final blow. I looked Ethan dead in the eyes and said, You wanted my company? I smiled. Cold. Perfect. Congratulations. I slid the termination papers in front of him. Now you can leave it unemployed. Sophia was terminated on the spot. Ethan was removed immediately. Security was called. The SEC investigation was already being prepared. Civil litigation followed. Fraud review. Breach of fiduciary duty. Corporate misconduct. Reputational death. As security approached, Ethan looked at me, not angry, panicked. Because for the first time he understood. He had lost everything. And I hadn't even started with the divorce yet. As they escorted him out, he turned and said, Emily, please, don't do this. I tilted my head, almost kindly. Oh, Ethan. I picked up my coffee and took a slow sip. I'm just getting started. 3 months later, Ethan sat across from me in divorce court, looking nothing like the man who once thought he owned my future. No designer confidence, no charming smile, no audience. Just a tired man in a borrowed suit, watching his life collapse one signature at a time. His law license was under review. The SEC investigation was still active. Most of his friends had disappeared the second the headline started. Sophia had done the same. Turns out loyalty is expensive when there's no money left. When the judge stepped out, Ethan finally looked at me. For the first time in years, he looked small. "Emily was, please," he said quietly. "I made a mistake." I almost laughed. A mistake? For 2 years? In my bed? In my company? In my name? No, that wasn't a mistake. That was strategy. I folded my hands and looked at him calmly. "No," I said. "You made a plan." He swallowed hard. "I was stupid. I was selfish, but I loved you." I leaned forward and gave him the truth he deserved. "No, Ethan. You loved access. You loved comfort. You loved power. You loved the idea of standing next to something valuable and calling it yours." His eyes dropped. And I made sure that failed. Silence. Beautiful silence. The divorce was finalized that afternoon. No second chances, no dramatic apologies, no redemption arc, just consequences. 6 months later, Cole and Mercer was stronger than ever. Profits up, new leadership, real loyalty. I moved into my father's old office permanently. Not because I needed the space, but because I had earned it. People kept asking if I regretted any of it. The marriage, the public destruction, the way I ended him. I always gave the same answer. No, because losing Ethan didn't ruin my life. It showed me who had been ruining it all along. Claire and I still talk sometimes. Funny how betrayal introduces you to better people than love ever did. And me? I sleep peacefully now. No lies in my house. No traitors in my bed. No thieves at my table. Just peace. Real peace. The kind you only get after you stop begging people to love you correctly. Ethan thought he was stealing my life upstairs that night. What he really did was hand me the perfect reason to take his.